Darkness versus light. Since the beginning of time, humans have noticed the push and pull between evil and good, night and day, yin and yang. Early on, we can see this represented in Greek mythology. Erebus, the primordial god of darkness and the underworld, versus his son Aether, the god of the sky and light. Stories have constantly represented these two enemies in various ways, relying on metaphor and imagination to convey its message. This works incredibly well for the medium. However, things become drastically different when an artist wants there to be visuals involved. So how do you, as an artist, use framing to express this? The first thing you need to do is ask yourself, what is the scene about? In my favorite animated show of all time, The Last Airbender, Zuko is a character conflicted between following his father's footsteps of evil or rebelling with his uncle in the name of peace. These forces of good versus evil are represented by two dragons, the first firebenders, brilliantly highlighting the convolution he has to overcome as a prince. Although this representation is brilliant and works well in an animated format, what ways can you implement this in a less fictional or realistic film? A common theme that is present in almost all of Francis Ford Coppola's films is the strong use of lighting. For this video, I'm going to mainly focus on Gordon Willis's job in the Godfather trilogy and Vittorio Storaro on Apocalypse Now. First thing you might notice about what these two films have in common is how incredibly dark certain scenes are. Before the 70s, lighting as a tool wasn't usually a huge focal point, and many films would often just use fill lights so all the characters' faces could be visibly seen. Even in dark places or at night where that physically wouldn't make any sense. It was only later that low-key lighting and in certain moments available lighting became a lot more popular. Gordon Willis originally decided on using overhead lighting in order to put emphasis on the jaw makeup that was on Marlon Brando. However, after seeing how good and dramatic it made those scenes look, he extended this approach to other moments in the film. Many people, including the studio Paramount, took issue with this. Not being able to see the character's eyes at important moments was not something that was really done before on big budget films. But Willis stuck with his vision, and that's how he got the nickname the King of Darkness.
I just simply pictured things a different way, and in some cases it caused a ruckus now and then, because it's like saying, well, we can't do that because that's never been done before, Well, I never did it in that spirit. I just simply did it because I liked it.
The reason lighting plays such a key role in a film like this is because it sets the tone of seriousness, the possibility that there's violence in the shadows, that someone who you think is your friend might strangle you when you look the other way. It adds a depressing, somber theme that keeps you on the edge of your seat.
It's not one thing that you do from a visual point of view that makes anything work. The art direction has to be right, the wardrobe has to be right, the shot structure has to be right, and the lighting has to accommodate whatever it is you're introducing related to filtering, etc. So you can't just do one thing.
The only time in the film where we don't see this overabundance of shadows is when Michael flees to Sicily. By falling in love, his entire world changes. Even though his life is still in danger and he's constantly surrounded by two bodyguards, there isn't a single dark scene during this whole sequence. His life literally gets brighter since he found a woman to live for. This adds so much weight after her death, and Michael has to return to his dark, gloomy reality and find a way to get his revenge and secure his place in power. The only other moment that's bright and vibrant is the wedding scene at the beginning. All of the fun and excitement being had at that party intercuts with the Don's office, where Willis employs the dark overhead lighting. This contrast of bright happiness with dark seriousness conveys to us how even though these gangsters can bring wealth and happiness to their families, their own life isn't able to afford that luxury and calmness. This strong contrast of light versus dark shows the duality of good and evil and the stress that they strain on people. While The Godfather starts by showing us the contrast between the mob life and their families based on how the lighting changes depending on the situation Michael or the other characters are in, Apocalypse Now is a much more subtle and gradual shift. I think my favorite aspect of Apocalypse Now is how the lighting gets darker the further we get into the film. We can see that Willard has PTSD from the very beginning when it comes to going back to the trenches, but we don't actually get to see any of what makes him act this way, at least not yet. While following their boat trip, we get to see not only a descent into madness, but of history as well. Once Willard meets Kurtz, he's in such an abstract place with no rules, we see how even his entourage has returned to a primitive state. The final sequence where Kurtz and Willards meet each other is incredibly dark, literally and figuratively.
We went back there, and they had come and hacked off every inoculated arm. Little arms.
We only get to see the side of Kurt's face and his bald head, dripping with water from one light source, a flickering fire. This is a man who let darkness and madness consume him, who found solidarity in the brutality of violence, a realm without laws or rules to contain him. When Willard first strikes him with his machete, we don't get to see his emotions at all, just his silhouette as he plunges his weight down. Instead of distastefully showing the gore, like how other directors like Quentin Tarantino might do, the machete slices are intercut with the natives outside butchering a cow in a ceremonial ritual. The footage is real and was shot on the spot when Coppola noticed the natives were going to do it. The comparison of man killing man and man killing animal is a brilliant way to finish the story. In the end, Willard did what he initially set out to do, even though he turned into an animal in the process. A fascinating fact that I discovered while researching this film is that Jim Morrison's father, George Morrison, was a U.S. Navy admiral who had a key role in charge of the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which famously gave the Johnson administration the justification it needed to escalate the Vietnam War. The song The End by The Doors plays at this intense scene where Willard completes his mission, and it even also plays at the very beginning, where Willard is expressing how he feels like everything he has done was irrelevant, and he's back at square one. The film's depiction of Willard's mental state literally never ends because it starts the exact same way. Jim Morrison and Coppola also went to school together. It's incredible to think about how art and the world are so interconnected in so many different ways. When Kurt says,
We train young men to drop fire on people, but their commanders won't allow them to write fuck on their airplane because it's obscene.
this line is replacing the part of the song where Jim Morrison sings fuck in the lyrics, ending the intense scene with just the instrumental part. Words literally cannot describe the intensity that they are experiencing. It's astounding the amount of thought that went into the subtle parts of this film that really tie everything together. Because of all these different elements, and especially the lighting, this cements Coppola, in my opinion, as one of the best directors of all time. What do you guys think about my video? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Feel free to leave a comment. I'm very interested in what you guys thought. Thanks for watching.